everyone, and welcome to our first panel here at SCGCON. My name is Jeremy Noell. I'll be your moderator this weekend, and today we're going to be going over the Magic the Gathering product year in review. And today I have with me Gavin Verhey. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, my name is Gavin Verhey. I am a senior game and product designer at Wizards of the Coast and help craft many of the mini products that have come out this year.
All right, and also Mike Turian.
Hi everyone, I'm Mike Turian. I'm a principal product designer at Wizards of the Coast. I've been at Wizards for 14 years. I just rejoined Magic R&D right at the end of 2017, so the 2018 year in review is perfect timing for me, so I'm excited about that.
Right, you learned about a lot of things coming out when you came in. You know, you're like, oh, what's this new Explorers of Ixalan thing? Let's talk about it or whatever, right?
Yeah, no, it's always super exciting. I mean, back when I joined Wizards, Champions of Kamigawa was a set that had just come out, but like basically you just skip a year ahead in time. So like I went right to Ravnica, so that was pretty fun.
Right, when you enter, you kind of have this black hole, right? Where you're like, what's this set? Like my black hole is Avacyn Restored. Like, what's an Avacyn Restored? I don't know. There's Terminus, I think, is an Avacyn Restored. That's a card.
Right, yeah. You're just like, you see it later on, and you're like, oh, this is a Magic card. That's pretty fun. How'd that happen?
A fun story is on my test to get into Wizards, they ask you like a bunch of cards, like, oh, what do you think about these cards or whatever? And a lot of mine were Avacyn Restored cards.
Oh.
And I got asked what I thought about Tybalt. And I said, well, this is clearly ridiculous. Or like, why would you ever make this card? It's not playable and kind of silly. And then I was like, I got hired. I was like, must have nailed all my answers. Come into work. First thing I see on day one, look at the Avacyn Restored spoiler. Tybalt's right there staring at me, and I'm like, "What? This is a real Magic card?"
I feel like you were right though. I feel like the audience agreed with you. It turned out.
Yeah. Two-mana Planeswalkers. Hard to make those fun.
All right, so I'm going to go over here. This is I might have missed something, but I believe every kind of major-ish product release. So I might be missing something like the guild packs and stuff. I don't think I put down here that came out in the mass market stores that had what was it, 20 cards in those, something like that.
Are you talking the theme
the guild kits?
The guild theme packs.
Oh, the theme boosters.
The theme boosters.
Oh, the theme boosters.
Things like that. I didn't actually write down here because so this is like most of the major releases. So January 13th we had Rivals of Ixalan. March 16th Masters 25. April 6th, Dual Decks Elves vs. Inventors. April 21st, Dominaria. June 8th, Battle Bond. Also June 8th, Commander Anthology Volume 2. June 15th, Signature Spellbook Jace. June 22nd, the Global Series Jiang Yung and Mu Yanling. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. July 7th, Core Set 2019, August 10th, Commander 2018, September 29th, Guilds of Ravnica, October 3rd, Guilds of Ravnica Mythic Edition, and as of 12 hours ago, Ultimate Masters.
Is that all?
That was your main event.
We have more. There's the Spellslinger Starter Kit.
Oh yeah, that was a thing.
You mentioned the theme boosters.
The theme boosters.
The guild kits.
The guild kits. There were definitely a bunch of other major ones, and I said I might have missed some stuff here. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's okay. I think we can work with that list. Yeah. There's enough there to probably fill about 8 hours of content.
Exactly. So it seems like this year, especially compared to previous years, that you all have been pretty busy in this department here. So do you want to kind of guide us through like how you plan out a year like this with this many products?
Well, you know, something we're doing right now a lot at Wizards of the Coast is we're trying to test a lot of things out and learn from them. So we're releasing things, seeing how players react to them, and then making tweaks going forward. For example, how Masters 25 did helped influence a little bit of what happened with Ultimate Masters, as one example. So we're releasing things and learning from them. And as a result, you're going to see some unique products coming out, like the Global Series, where we launched that, and then how did this do? Did it hit our goals? Did it help excite the target market for the product? And so you're going to see some of those more one-off products show up, and then maybe if they're successful, turn into larger scale products. And while the beats of, hey, we have 4 main sets a year, right? We've got the core set, which core set 2019 was on there. Right?
Yes, core set 2019.
Yeah, we got the core set. We got the 3 mainline booster sets. But in addition to that, there's a lot of other things we're trying out, and we have to find the right spot to put those. And we try and make sure that we separate, give everything as much space as possible, some things get less room to breathe than others, but we try and make sure they're not right next to a very similar targeted release.
Yeah, you don't want Commander Anthology right next to your yearly Commander release, things like that.
Right, so we gave that there's a few months, for example, to breathe. But also when you're making a schedule, there's all kinds of things like holidays to consider and many other things that go into it.
Yeah, because we also had one of the other products was the holiday promo pack that just came out as well. So, all right.
Do you have anything to say on that at all, Mike? Or?
I think that when you read the list off of a paper, like, yes, it sounds like a lot, and it is, and it's more than Wizards has done in the past. But I think if one of the things we'd like to think about is, who's the audience for the product, right? And a lot of the products, like the dual decks, as a fixed deck product, it's like, okay, this is for you to buy, for you to play as an experience, right? And we know that some people like to go and collect them all and mix up the play experience. Same thing with the guild kits, right? You buy them, are you buying them because of the nostalgia of, hey, you've been playing Ravnica, since it came out, and you want to relive that? Or are you playing it because, you're relatively new to Magic and you haven't experienced some of the original awesome Ravnica cards, right? And you want to be reliving that while playing Guilds of Ravnica, right? I mean, I used to work on the Magic Online team, and it was always interesting to me to hear people saying, I really like the flashback drafts because it gives me a way to go and experience something that I missed out on, right? I mean, with how long we've been playing Magic, you just assume, well, everyone of course has done Mirage drafts or played Mirage Seal. It's like, no, actually, it's a pretty small percentage of our audience. And likewise, I mentioned the Spell Slinger starter kit because that's our attempt at, hey, how do we keep bringing in new players to the game? Welcome Decks is another product that we are constantly doing to bring new players in. So it runs the gamut of from our super fan to somebody who is trying out Magic or even trying out a card game for the very first time.
Sure. Okay. So we do have a few questions here that were sent in from people in the audience that were sent in previously to the con. So the first one, I'm going to kind of go. I've tried to organize them a little bit here. But they might be a little jumping around. So the first one,
fun trip through time.
Yes, exactly. Yes. The first one comes from Brian Basoko, and they ask, we saw Ravnica have more of an impact on Eternal formats than any other set in release in recent years. How do you draw the line between good enough for Modern and too powerful for Standard?
Yeah, that's a really tricky thing to address because we don't want Standard running around at a Modern power level, but we want to print new cards for Modern. And one of the great ways we can do that is with answer cards. So I'll give a pretty popular one, which is Assassin's Trophy. A really strong card, showing up a lot in Standard, but at the end of the day, how powerful an answer can be is kind of capped, right? You're not going to see, like Assassin's Trophy is played as a 2 or 3 of in a lot of Standard black-green decks, sometimes 4 copies, but it's always going to just destroy something. At the end of the day, your opponent's going to play something, you're going to kill it, and the game will move on. As opposed to a card like a Tarmogoyf or a truly named Nemesis, where it comes down and really ends the game. That is the thing that makes the game be over. And then older formats like Legacy and Modern always need those efficient answers and the cheap efficient answers. And so we can kind of easily print, or not easily, but with some finesse, can print these kind of answer cards in Standard and have them hit Modern. Where things are a lot harder is printing those threats and making sure those are fun. And occasionally we can do it with cheap things like Delver of Secrets. It's a great example of a card that would hit in older formats, but those are often a lot harder to get out there.
Yeah, I agree with Gavin. I think that looking at the mana base is another way where you can differentiate the two formats, right? I mean, Modern in general is just playing cheaper cards and has access to such a better mana base than Standard typically does that that's just another place where there's good differentiation. Also, I look at, if you just look at the archetypes that exist in the different formats, right? Like when you're evaluating a new card for Modern, you're often looking at, okay, how does this line up in the current metagame? So even though we're end up projecting those metagames, right, we still try to look ahead and say, all right, this is what we feel like is going to be good in Standard. This is what we already know is good in Modern, and we try to navigate those two with the abilities we put on cards. And really just these tiny little tweaks will end up making a huge difference for both the metagames and the cards themselves.
And I mean, we're talking about Guilds of Ravnica specifically here. The thing about Guilds is it's a multicolor set. Lots and lots of two-color cards. And older formats just have, as Mike alluded to, better mana bases. You can use your fetch land, shock land mana bases, which will let you play more of those cards easily and make sure you hit your mana on time.
Sure. Okay, another one in a similar vein. It has to do with Ravnica anyway. Since this comes from Vincent Spezzo, and they ask, since this was the first Ravnica set that was intended to never be drafted together with other sets, what kind of challenges did that pose, and what kind of design doors did that open?
Yeah, as someone who, so my first set when I came to Wizards that I worked on was Return to Ravnica, and it was super fun to work on, had a great time, but there was the specter the whole time over the set of how is it going to draft when we get to Dragon's Maze? And you have to think about how it's going to interact with all of the Dragon's Maze cards and all of the Gate Crash cards, and simultaneously all those sets are being designed in parallel, and so you don't even necessarily know how it's all going to come together. You can kind of speculate. So it was very freeing from a design perspective this time to focus on, hey, let's make this one set as great of a set as it can be to draft. We don't have to worry about how it interacts with the Ravnica Allegiance or the mysterious third set after it. We can just focus on this one set right here. So from my perspective, I thought it was super freeing to be able to just make one set and make that one awesome.
Yeah, funny enough, one of the first sets I worked on was the original Ravnica.
You've been at Wizards for 14 years, you said, Mike?
Yeah, 14 years.
And I've been there for 7, so we've got like a fun half-piece parallel story here.
Yeah, we should have brought somebody who just started working there this week, and then we'd have the whole gamut there. But it makes me agree with you strongly, because the original Ravnica was set up where it was 4 of the guilds, and then we released 3 guilds and then 3 guilds. And so when you're doing 4 guilds, like, it makes a huge challenge of, you basically end up with a color pair gap, right? Like, doing the 5 guilds means that basically you end up being able to balance them reasonably well of, okay, if I draft white first, I can be going Selesnya or I can be going Boros. In the original Ravnica, there was no is-it pairing. So if you drafted a blue card first, that meant that Dimir was your natural pairing. And if you drafted a red card first, that meant that it was Boros, I believe, were the 2 pairings. And so, like, we had to build a connection between blue and red, and actually one of the ways we did that was just by powering up some of the individual cards. And so there was this like secret is-it blue-red deck that you could just draft in Ravnica, even though you'd be playing no gold cards. And from a design standpoint, that's a pretty odd solution to this problem. Of course, we wanted to introduce nice depth to the format and great replayability, and we knew that eventually it was going to be introduced as, I think it got introduced in Guild Pack, but in the original Ravnica only, we just had to sort of find these creative solutions where now you can just draft this, like, you have like a perfect sandbox. You have all the information and you know what all the cards are going to do. And that just means that, you can really sculpt something that both offers the depth, but then also it's depth for the format and then depth for the player and their individual draft experience. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a way better way to do things in terms of, for Ravnica with the guilds, just the way we did this most recent time.
Okay, our next question comes from Brian Neal, and they ask, and this is something that I want to kind of explain after I ask the question a little bit. So their question is, what happened to Heroes of Dominaria? I saw it at Gen Con, and I was hoping I could buy it in time for Christmas. Now, Heroes of Dominaria was the board game. It was originally announced in March. During an article released by Blake Rasmussen in May, it was announced that the game would release in July, and that previews would be happening at the UK Games Expo and Origins Game Fair that year. But the actual product came out about a week ago. Like, it was in stores about a week ago. That is not actually a product that is being published by you. It's actually being published by WizKids, a separate entity. Do you happen to know what happened there? What was going on? Was there just delays in that?
Still in time for Christmas, I'll note.
Yes, still in time for Christmas.
So no problem.
Which I wanted to point that out.
This is actually Mike's product, so I'll let him take it.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, Heroes of Dominaria was produced by WizKids. It was designed in-house at Wizards. And then, WizKids definitely has put their touches on it as we sort of did the design and then passed it off to them. I think that, in the production industry, there's always challenges in manufacturing when you're doing something new. And I think that the game ran into some of those production challenges. From a design standpoint, I'm super excited about the game. I've played it a number of times, and it's tons of fun. You get access to a lot of the core mechanics of Magic, but sort of redesigned into a board game fashion. And so I've always really enjoyed playing the game an awful lot. And so I'm super excited that it's actually now coming out. It does have some really nice production value. And I think that just getting that all right and those pieces all aligned just took WizKids because they wanted to make sure that it hit the quality standards that everybody's been accustomed to with Magic. And so, I think that having worked at Wizards as long as I have, that you somewhat take it for granted that, hey, when we say we're going to have a release date for a physical Magic product, that happens. But, when I work with the production team and I work with the various teams in the building, it is so impressive how much detail and how much effort and how much collaboration just goes into making sure those pieces fall into place. And that's a finely tuned machine that we've built up over the course of just years and years. So long story short, I'm still super excited that Heroes is coming out this year. It's a blast to play. You should pick up a copy. I'm biased, but you should. Only
slightly biased. Our next question comes from Damian Peckford, who, similar, it's still in Dominaria range. Will we be seeing more sets like Dominaria and M19? Those sets seem very popular, and the thought of more historic synergy is great. So both of these sets did kind of hearken to the past of Magic, while also bringing a fresh take to it. So is that something that we can kind of expect now that it's been as popular as it has been?
This is Magic's 25th year. Super exciting. We have this great backlog of history to draw upon, and we will absolutely be using it in the future. And you even see a little bit of it right now, too, with Guilds of Ravnica. We're drawing upon what we saw in previous Ravnica sets. With Dominaria, we used kind of a new lens to design with. We used a lot of what we call lenticular design. And Time Spiral, to go back many, many years, you worked on Future Sight, for example, and those years of sets. I love them. That block is one of my favorite blocks of all time. But part of where they fell down is, to the experienced player, it made a lot of sense. But to the new player, nothing made sense at all, right? You're coming in and you got Viscera Deepwalker. You're like, why does this Halmerid thing have suspend and water breathing? What is water breathing in a Halmerid also? All these questions. You combine two Cyclopean mummies and Cyclopean tomb to get Cyclopean giant. Ta-da! It's like, it just doesn't make any sense. So with Dominaria, we looked through a brand new lens, or kind of a new design lens called lenticular design, where if you're an experienced player, you see all the references. But if you're a new player, it's just a sweet card. So a card like Blackblade Reforged or Lyra Dawnbringer. If you're a new player, you just see a sweet sword or a sweet angel. Those are cool things. I like swords and angels. But if you're an experienced player, you know the history of the Blackblade. You can equate Lyra Dawnbringer to Rhea Dawnbringer, and that means something to you. That's really powerful. And with Core 2019, we have the 5 Elder Dragons, which, if you're new, they're just sweet dragons. You could build 3-color decks around them, build your commander or brawl decks around them. They're just cool looking. And of course, the experienced player, it has this great history of commander. It has this great history of the Elder Dragon War. And so I think you'll see a lot more of that kind of lenticular nature as we go forward. And some sets will have more than others. Return to sets can do that more than brand new worlds can. But we want to tap into that where we can, because Magic has this great, deep, rich history, and it would be a shame to not use it.
So when we return to Lorwyn
or Kamigawa,
that everybody's asking about, Mike, do you
someday.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I really love about Wizards is how much we listen to feedback, right, from our players, from looking at how individual products do. I remember after Dominaria came out earlier this year and was so successful and just so beloved by so many people, we had a retrospective where we were going through the whole list of what did we do right with Dominaria, and the list. I mean, it just I think it was either an hour or a 2-hour meeting, and I remember at the end of it, people were still contributing like other ways in which we really hit it out of the park, right? And that list was a lot that came from the players and then was being reiterated through the conversation. So I mean, to me, I think that just building on that success is key, and it is something that I mean, Gavin mentioned it with Ravnica, like we just really when we feel like, yes, we've delivered something so resonant and so awesome and just really connected with all the levels of players, like absolutely, that's something that we're excited to go back and do again. On the flip side, when we discover challenges, it's like, well, that's an opportunity for us to go and say, okay, what about this did people like? What about this did work? So that way we can, go and revisit some, and take something and make it even better the next time.
Awesome. And 2 elements of Dominaria. I think we'll see some of the elements of Dominaria pulled apart and used in other places. And looking at things like more legendary creatures, for example, to help tell those stories, because a proper name does so much to reference back. You might see some of the mechanics make a return appearance somewhere. I could see historic showing up again. Sagas. What does a saga look like in a different world, right? In Commander 2018, for a little while, we had a card called Saga of the Hellvault, which was a saga that had like that Avacyn popping out of it at the end, right? So who knows where else those kind of cards might show up and what kind of fun stories we could tell if we revisit old worlds. So awesome. I think you'll see these tools in our toolbox that we can whip out and do some cool stuff with.
That's awesome. Yeah. All right. This is one that it comes from Jack Pullman, and this is one that kind of going away a little bit from the sets themselves and things, but one of the things that happened recently, it was actually announced last year, I believe, is that there was a new team called Play Design. And the Play Design was integrated into Wizards R&D. And Jack's question is, how has Play Design's integration into Wizards R&D been seen at the design level as already successful in the sets their work has been completed in? And also says, as a player, these new sets have been incredible. So
yeah, I mean, well, I think it's evident in Standard right now. Play Design really got into full swing with Dominaria and Guilds of Ravnica. And Guilds of Ravnica, frankly, one of the best standard environments I think we've ever seen. Not just pat myself on the back and Play Design on the back too much. Thank you, Mike. Yeah. Good work, Mike. Good work. But I'm super happy with how this environment turned out. And a lot of that, I think, is because of Play Design's hard and diligent work, Beforehand, we had a group of play testers, developers, but they had a lot of other things on their plate to do. Like, you came to Wizards, you started by playing a lot of Magic, and then quickly you got assigned leading projects and all these other things to work on, and you started playtesting less and less. And what we noticed is people would come in, playtest a lot when they were new and kind of knew the least about how to playtest. And then as they learn more, they get pulled onto other projects, and that wasn't a very good cycle to get into. So Play Design was kind of created as a stable of people that are like, no, really, your job is building and playing decks and focusing on Standard. And it has just been night and day. Like, they've done such a great job. And I think Guilds of Ravnica Standard has turned out amazing. And I think going forward, a lot of the future Standard environments, you'll see the same stuff. Now, it's not always going to be perfect. Ravnica naturally lends itself to great Standard environments because the mana base is good. You can play with a lot of different cards. But if their handiwork that we've seen so far is any indication, I think there'll be a lot of great Standard and modern and limited environments in the future.
Awesome. Mike, as someone who's been there a little bit longer, do you have any other?
Well, so for me, it was interesting because I mean, the way I came into Wizards was I was at the time a game developer. That would now be called a game designer, but we had this distinction of, oh, Mark Rosewater and his team was doing the design work, and then there was a period called Divine, which was design handing it to development, and then of course development would sort of take the cards to the finish and what you'd end up seeing. And that process worked in a lot of ways. But I mean, as Gavin was alluding to, one of the places that it ran into challenges was, like, for instance, for me, I believe when I was leading, I believe it was Morning Tide or Worldwake, I forget which set. I was also the lead for Plane Chase, right? And at the time, I mean, as we're talking about this large line of products, we didn't have nearly as many people working, and so like leading a major release and the creation of a new product at the same time is, of course, just, I mean, it's just riddled with challenges of, you know, of time, basically. And so, like, in this new world, having people to come in and be dedicated at playtesting and really refining their craft of creating these great environments, right, is just, it's definitely a revolution. And one of the things I really like about it too is, in some ways, it's like it breaks down some of the silos, right? When, hey, we know that, like, they're going to be there, and they sort of propagate throughout the process as well, right? And so, yeah, it's been great.
You know, I'll say that something I think we're going to get better and better at it at Wizards is we used to, in my time when I started there, and probably even more when Mike started there, take a lot of things and throw it over the wall and let another team deal with it, right? So like design would kind of throw over the wall to development, and then development would do the rest. Or, you know, we'd throw it to creative, and creative would put their skin on it. And now we all work much more close together because we find that the best sets we make are when we really all work in unison. So having design and play design and creative all working on the set together lets us make it the most cohesive thing that we can, as opposed to just, okay, we made a Magic set, now creative, give it flavor. That doesn't work nearly as well, and we've kind of found that.
Okay, cool. All right, the next one kind of shifts a little bit, and this is something that's that we've seen this year just a little bit, but Jose Martinez has asked, with MTG Arena growing the way that it is, do you think that there will be even more in-game products mixed in with newer things to give incentives to purchase their real life items? Because recently we had, I believe it was the Planeswalker decks that gave a code where you could get the full Planeswalker deck on Magic Arena, on the Magic the Gathering Arena client as well. So is that something, like, are you getting feedback from that kind of thing? There was also a test, I believe it was Australia, that gave away packs in Ravnica.
Close to Australia, I think it was maybe New Zealand.
Maybe it was New Zealand, and that was it. But that, like, these are all tested. Are you still just in the testing phase, or is that something you're thinking about moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, we were super excited with the Guilds of Ravnica pre-release. Right, there was a code in on the back of your token, and we were super excited to see how many of our players played in a pre-release and then went into Arena, right? And so, like, the Planeswalker decks is another good example of, hey, how can we be making your in-store purchase a better purchase, right? And I think that we're gonna, you know, our goal is to see more of that. Our goal is to see that, you know, being a Magic player means, yes, you can come to awesome events like this one in person and play, and that's super rewarding. And then, you know, when you're at your house and you have some free time, and, you know, you want to be preparing or just having a good time, that Arena's there for that too. So I'm excited to see where it goes in terms of more codes, and I think that it's something that's been working so far. So I'm excited.
Awesome. Okay, the next one is from Tim Bister, who, in a similar vein with just the supplemental products, I think that challenger decks were really successful, especially for new players to buy one and be able to have a decent playable deck for F&M. Was there any consideration for making guild kits standard legal, or might we see other standard legal challenger decks in the future?
You know, with guild kits, there are a lot of things talked about. Standard legal was one of them, but a really fun part of them is being able to reach back into those old Ravnica sets and make it feel like a collection of Ravnicas. And something we haven't done a lot of is sell individual decks, not dual decks, but individual decks that are these kind of more casual mashup decks. Like, are they modern decks? Well, technically, but I wouldn't play them in a modern tournament, you know? We wanted to see how that did, and really grabbing all that Ravnica history was the way to do it. So guild kits, we mostly wanted to leave in the space that they were and not make those standard legal, because we wanted to put whatever we wanted into them without having to balance them against standard. With that said, though, on the challenger deck front, challenger decks were really successful. The first batch was awesome for us. They sold out across the board for the most part. Players loved them. It just helped a lot of people access standard. And whenever we do something successful, I like to think we'll do it again. We haven't announced anything for challenger decks yet, but I think there's a reasonable chance you'll see them on the horizon.
Yeah, for me, I think one of the keys to standard legality is understanding, what is this product intended to do, right? Like guild kits, Gavin hit on. I don't think we have sound.
All right, keep going.
Hello? Okay. Gavin hit on guild kits. If you look back at dual decks, right? Dual decks, we also just went back through Magic's history and picked cards that would work for the dual deck theme. But then there's other products that we are fully standard. Welcome decks is a great example of, who's this for? This is for, you're brand new. You get this maybe at a convention, maybe at your game store, and we want to make sure that we're building your collection so that, standard is just hugely popular, and we want to make sure we're giving you cards to come in and play that format right away, right? And so that sort of really runs the gamut there of what it is. But really for us, it's taking a look at the product and doing the right thing for the audience of that product.
Okay. All right. So our next one comes from Matt Marshall. And I originally told Gavin this question, and I said, well, we'll probably tweak it a little bit because I don't know if you can actually answer this. But he said, go ahead and shoot. So
this was, I believe, the only question you pre-screened through me.
Yeah, that's true.
And I already was like, no, just ask the original question.
Yeah, so are there any plans to reprint fetches during standard blocks in the near future?
All right, let's talk about fetch lands, Jeremy.
All right, let's talk about fetch lands.
Let's talk about fetch lands. Fetch lands are beloved by players. People love playing them with decks. They come with a number of challenges, too. One is that they just add a lot of shuffling into the game. And we've found that shuffling both adds a lot of time to tournaments. We even looked at the difference between how long tournaments took in standard with fetch lands and how long they took without fetch lands. And granted, there are other factors, too. After rotation, decks are different. But fetch lands added significant time to tournaments. So that's one big thing. Additionally, shuffling a lot is not necessarily the most fun if you're coming brand new into the game, right? A lot of players will pay the kind of initial cost of, hey, let's shuffle my deck to sit down and play. But then once you're playing, doing a lot of shuffling it's like, well, just have to handle this deck. I gotta deal with shuffling it, and it kind of creates a loading screen in the middle of a game, right? Like you're playing your video game, and it just takes time. It's like, well, okay, crack my fetch, go find my land, put it into play, and everyone's just kind of waiting around for stuff to happen.
Oh, you forgot to pay a life.
Yeah, you forgot to pay a life, right? And additionally, right there, speaking of the pay a life part, dual lands are hard enough to make new players recognize are strong. Ones that don't even tap for mana and you lose a life when you activate them are really hard to make work. So there's a lot of pressures pushing in that sense. Additionally, kind of what has defined modern and these older formats is the fetch land, dual land mana base. And in standard, having that be around makes it feel more like modern, helps prove its identity. And someday, and it's a matter of time, someday we probably will create some other format that's between modern and standard. I don't know if it's going to be this year or next year or 5 years from now, but someday that's going to happen. And if we don't want standard and that whatever that format is, or excuse me, modern and whatever that format is to feel too similar, making sure that fetches aren't there would be a thing we'd want to consider, at least give us the option to do. And then in standard alone, right, having that fetch land, dual land mana base caused all kinds of troubles with the last time we did it in Battle for Zendikar, Khans of Tarkir. So could they show up in a standard set again? I mean, we know players like them. is absolutely a button we can push if we need to. And if the set is right for it, there's a chance. But I think we're going to mostly want to keep those in more eternal formats like Modern right now. Yeah. With that said, though, there's always a chance. If you would ask me if they were going to be in Cons of Tarkir, I probably would have told you no when I was working on the set, in early pre-design. But then as we got into it, it made a lot of sense for the set, help fuel things like Delve, help make the 3-color mana bases work. So you never know when they might show up.
Now I'm just imagining there's a button on Gavin's desk that says reprint fetches that he can just push.
It's a very dangerous button. You must press it wisely. I don't know, Mike, if you have anything you want to add to that or not. But
well, if you change the question to, are we going to make more awesome dual lands? The answer is absolutely yes.
Right.
But we're going to learn from our designs of the past, and we're going to innovate, right? I mean, I know I'm a huge fan of awesome dual lands, and like that we're going to do for sure. But a lot of the limitations and a lot of the challenges you were hitting on about the fetch lands, like I mean, to me, I remember when I started playing, which was around the time of Revised, the store would offer you if you bought a pack and it had a dual land in it, you could trade it in and buy another pack. I quickly realized that I should also be doing that, and so I built up a nice collection of dual lands that way. But I mean, people were taking them up on the offer all the time. Like it was seen as, no, I want to open up a Shivan Dragon, right? I want to open up a Sengir Vampire, right? Although we didn't even realize that wasn't a rare. But right, and that still is the same as it is today. And so, right, I mean, we're always looking to navigate that well. But yeah, we're absolutely going to make awesome dual lands. I can see fetch lands coming back at some point in the future, but I think we'll evaluate that basically as we plan out sets and formats so that everyone can have a great time.
What I'm hearing, Mike, is 3-color fetch lands.
Yes, that does sound.
Try fetch lands.
Maybe you don't have to pay a life.
No problem.
No problem.
No issues there.
One last thing I want to say on the shuffling thing, too, is you'll notice that that's actually permeating throughout Magic. Like, we're trying to find places where we can cut that off where we can. Things like Elvish Rejuvenator, for example, or things that look at your top end cards. But because it does a couple good things. One, it removes shuffling, which is really nice. And two, in the cases of things like Elvish Rejuvenator, it encourages you to make sure that your deck has the right spread of colors as opposed to just splashing. So in that case, use it to find a land, but it's not going to get you your one island every single time. So it works well in a deck that is built to use all 3 colors, but not one which is just splashing it. Or if you're playing a tutor card like Collected Company or something like that, it tells you to play a lot of low CMC creatures in your deck as opposed to just a few low CMC creatures you can tutor for. So we've been experimenting a lot in that space too, and we're trying to cut down on that shuffling where we can. Not saying shuffling is going away. We're not going to a world where you never shuffle your deck, trust me. But just looking for places where we can tune that a little bit.
Yeah, as evidenced by what was the card called? District Guide, I believe, or the 2/2 for 3 that goes and fetches a land or a gate.
Right.
Yeah.
So that guy shuffles still.
Exactly. That just came out shortly after Elvish Rejuvenator, so there's obviously still space for that. Our next one is from Todd Copenhaver, who asks, because Battlebond was released this year, actually we talked about it during the last SCGCON, do you think that there's design space in the future for further 2HG-centric products?
Totally. I mean, Battlebond was a huge success for us. I think it really highlighted how much fun it is to play Magic together. It's super cool to sit down and be like, hey, you and me, we're playing, we can talk about Magic, we can high-five when a cool thing happens. So, Two-Headed Giant or even beyond, Emperor, who knows, there's all kinds of design space there. And while Battlebond was very challenging to create because getting the balance was just right, there was a ton of multiplayer mechanic space we've never touched that we could totally tap into and do even more of if there was another Two-Headed Giant set or a 3-player set. I know I have numerous discarded Battlebond mechanics I would happily bring back if the time allowed for it.
That's sweet.
Yeah, we've been doing some interviews at Wizards, and one of the things that we do is we've been playing games with them over lunch, right? So they have a few hours of interviews, and then lunch you get to play some Magic, and we've been doing that Two-Headed Giant because not with Battlebond, we were doing it with the guild kits, and Two-Headed Giant's just a really fun collaborative format. It's fun to have someone to talk through your game with. And for people who don't want the politics of multiplayer, Two-Headed Giant's great because it still is a one-on-one experience in terms of, hey, us doing better is good for us, and it's not, do I kill you or do I kill you, or or sandbagging, any of those type of ploys. It's very straightforward, but it still has a lot of collaboration. There's high-fiving that goes on. I mean, I love the partner mechanic in Battle Bond, right? Because it really was like, yes, it does work if you put these both in your own deck, but it's so much more fun to really feel like a partner of, hey, I'm going to help out, right? Like, I'm going to cast Toothy, right? And just
I've got Pierre right here for you, Mike.
Right. And that moment, and the fact that those cards synergize, right? I really feel like that added a lot to the product and a lot to the fun, right? I mean, we're definitely, and this sounds slightly silly to say, but looking for ways to make Magic more fun and have people smile more. And that's always been a goal, but I feel like, you really see that come through in a product like Battle Bond of, when you're high-fiving while playing a game of Magic, like, that's just a good feeling and a good experience.
Man, that interview circuit at Wizards sounds rough. You got to play some Magic to a giant overlap. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I was gonna say you're really making it sound more like I don't even want a job at Wizards. I just want to go interview and hang out for a couple of days.
Right. If you don't win the game, it's a no hire recommendation for sure.
Just straight up. You're done.
It's a little rougher than it's. No, I'm just kidding.
All right. So this one's a little bit more of a general. The last couple I think are a little bit more general. The first one is from David Schultz. What do you think was the best thing to happen to Magic in 2018?
A lot of great things I think happened to Magic this year. I could easily cite the launch of Magic the Gathering Arena as a big one that'll propel us into the future. I could talk about all the different experiments we tried and what we learned from them. But I'm gonna, from a strictly card design perspective, I'm gonna say Dominaria. Dominaria showed us a lot of things. It showed that we can go back to a world and have it be a beloved world like Dominaria and have it be highly successful. That we can do this kind of lenticular design where we're playing with things that are old and nostalgic to get a wide swath of players excited. It taught us about the value of having a lot of legendary things in your set. It launched a brand new format with Brawl. It's Dominaria. So many things happened with that set. And I think we learned so much from it. So much. I'll put it this way. After Dominaria launched, I have had more meetings that were, okay, this worked in Dominaria. How can we apply this to future sets? Than pretty much any set since I've been at Wizards. And that's pretty telling. So that is my answer. I think there's a lot of great answers, but that's where I'm leaning. Mike, you might have a different one.
Yeah, I would go. You hit on two of the ones that immediately jumped to mind. So I'll talk about Arena. As I mentioned, I worked on Magic Online as a product manager for a couple of years, and I remember back then we were planning on the steps it would take to get to Magic Arena, and so seeing it come into beta this year has just been so exciting to see how many people have been playing it, because it's great to design a game, but if nobody plays that game, not that that's the case for Magic, then you have just that limited exposure. Magic already had tons and tons of fans, and that just gave us such a great platform for launching Arena to get players who were excited about playing Magic in, and also get Magic to people who have been playing other games, other digital games. Just maybe you haven't heard of any of it, and you see an ad on Facebook, and you just go and explore that. I mean, to me, Magic's made such a difference. And so when we come to these events, the people I talk to, it's just, I've been talking to people who've been playing for all 25 years of Magic, right? I mean, that's a huge portion of people's lives. So to get that to, the next generation of Magic players is super exciting.
Awesome. And then the last one is just in general, like, as a curiosity, how far do you have to work on ahead of time? Do you have to work on things that are the supplemental products? Because we know that there's been a lot of talk, there's been a lot of articles and things written about how long it takes to actually craft like one of the booster releases, like Dominaria. It takes years. It takes years of planning and all that stuff. So when you're doing things like the guild kits, like commander sets, like the dual decks, things of that nature, how long ahead do you actually have to plan that kind of thing?
I think it depends. The answer is it depends.
Okay.
Always a wonderful answer. And it depends on what the product is and how many of them there are in the series. So I'll get to the second one in a moment. For the first one, let's talk about two different products. Let's talk about Commander, and let's talk about the Challenger decks.
Okay.
The Challenger decks we have to make on a quick timeline because they have to be standard relevant, and they need to be legal and strong standard decks. Fortunately, Challenger decks pick up all things that already exist. We're not putting any new cards in there. There's no playtesting of new cards that have to happen, and we can kind of craft it around already successful decks out in the world. So the lead time on those is about 4 to 5 months to get a Challenger deck out in the world. It's actually basically the fastest product we make is Challenger decks. I'm even amazed we got the schedule down that far. On the flip side is Commander decks, which have a ton of new cards in them, a gameplay experience of these 5 decks or 4 decks playing against each other that we have to make sure is good, and a lot of play testing that goes into all of that. And Commander decks take, not as long as a mainline booster set, but a pretty long time to come out, like about that much time. And then to the second point, how far ahead do we have to look? With Commander, we're looking over many, many years and trying to figure out how they're going to sync up with the sets that are coming out around them, or how we're going to distribute themes so they make sense. For example, doing Tribal right before Lorwyn came, or right before, not Lorwyn. People on Reddit are going to be like, oh man, there's a return of Lorwyn coming.
Confirmed.
I finally leaked it.
Not
there we
confirmed.
go. No, right before Ixalan came out.
Ixalan, yeah.
Which had a huge tribal component to it. So, and we want to make sure we line those things up appropriately, And that means that we have to think about that way in advance. Where Challenger decks is kind of like, look, if we were going to do another series of Challenger decks, we would just wait, see what happened at the Pro Tour, and then try and figure it out from there. So there's a lot of different timing that goes into that to try and figure it all out. With Commander, I'm thinking ahead years and years and years and years on Commander releases. With other things, thinking way on a shorter scale. So it really does just depend.
Yeah, I think 3 to 4 years is sort of where we have things penciled in, right? In terms of that far out. But then there's actually like a plan further than that, if that makes sense, of, and basically as time moves forward, as you get closer to it, things become more and more real, right? Like, oh, here's this big long-term plan, but pieces move around within that plan. And then besides that, like once it does get to the era Gavin's talking about, right? Like then you're more looking at, okay, we need to make this change because of this thing, like moving a release by a month, or swapping releases by a few months, and
or
understanding
changing block structures.
Changing the block structure. I mean, that
was
right.
like a big one, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a big fundamental shift. Or even like talking about like changing how you draft sets, the order in which you draft sets, right? Like that had like when I'm talking about that penciled in long-term plan, that's not part of that plan.
Yeah.
However, as you understand what's going on in the Magic universe and what the player needs and what they're responding to, sometimes we end up making bigger changes on shorter timelines because it's the right thing to do and it's the right thing to try out. And if we always just go back to our historical roots and our historical desires, that wouldn't be progress, right? We would still be playing under mulligan systems where I drew my Mazavith. Well, I guess I have to keep this hand now, right? That's just not a rewarding gameplay experience. And changing the block structure lets us, we were talking about changing how Guilds of Ravnica is drafted in, or created that it's a one set draft experience. When we did a large set, small set every time, there wouldn't be that opportunity. And even though it might have been the right answer for Ravnica, Ravnica was built on the idea that there will be Ravnica, Guilds of Ravnica, and then Dissension. And you're going to draft them in that order. They're going to be released in that order. And just where when we came back and we returned to Ravnica, Gatecrash was a larger set, right? And so that was great because it let those guilds have cards that they deserve to have. Where, when we did Guild Pact, we were basically like, okay, here are the Gruul cards. And like every Gruul card that you did, like we knew for years those were going to be the only red, green, gold cards that represented Gruul. And so that's just those learnings and those changes and that evolution that we're always trying to succeed at.
Okay. And harkening to something that Mike said there, we do plan out our ancillary products quite a ways in advance. But unlike our main booster sets, which we have a pretty firm plan to kind of stick to one after the other, sometimes we can make things on much shorter timelines if we need to. For example, we didn't plan the Challenger decks out 3 years in advance, but we kind of saw, hey, Standard has a need. It could really use this right now. And we came up with those on a much faster timeline. Or like the Spellslinger starter kit. We saw, hey, there's not really good two-player learn-to-play experience right now. Let's go out and create one. And so they can happen on a very wide scale of, hey, we have the perfect ancillary product. We're going to pencil it in for years from now, all the way to, hey, this format really needs this right now. Let's come out with something on much shorter time scale.
Yeah, and I think one of the cool things that I see from time to time is, there's a great idea that doesn't necessarily have a product release associated with it. And a lot of times those are on this 5 or 7 year, they're just sort of being tweaked and worked on in the background, waiting for the right opportunity to release. And so that's always fun to see those sort of products come to life, where they're clearly great ideas and clearly a lot of fun, but they're not necessarily the right product that we're looking to make at the time that the idea is generated. So, in terms of that long timeline, those kind of are on this infinite timeline of, hey, there's this great idea and it's waiting and it's sitting and it's just looking for that the right moment.
Okay. All right. I think that's about our time today. So I want to thank you, Mike and Gavin, for coming out today for our product year in review, and thank everybody at home for watching and in the audience. And we will be back shortly, I guess.
And I encourage everyone, too, if you have any more product-related questions, you can always reach out to me on Twitter. More than happy to look at them, answer them. We got through a lot of wonderful questions today that covered actually a pretty wide range of topics. But we had so many questions, and there were still things we didn't even get close to talking about because there's so many products on this list. So please hit us up if you have questions. You can hit me at Gavin Verhey, at Turian.
Yeah, at Turian. Yep, that's right.
And ask us all your hard-hitting questions, and we'll respond. Probably.
Thank you so much, everyone.